Falcons Central. Here's Aaron Freeman and Scott Carasik.
Atlanta Falcons football is here once again. Man, that's right. What's up? Black male, ATL, let's go. Come on.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Falcons Central Radio on ProFootballCentral.com. My name is Aaron Freeman. I'm here with Scott Carasik. Today we're gonna have a
messing it up as usual.
Yeah, I knew it when I was gonna say it, and then it just my brain was like, don't mess it up, and then I messed it up. So yeah, we're here for another episode. Hopefully, we'll be joined by none other than former Falcons pass rusher Chuck Smith. And later we'll have everyone's favorite Falcons beat writer, D.Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to join us. But first, since, we're having a good pass rusher, a great pass rusher like Chuck Smith on, I think it would be our duty to offer our condolences for the passing of another great pass rusher, one of the greatest pass rushers to ever walk this earth, the guy who invented the term sack, the guy who unofficially holds the single-season sack record with 26 in a 14-game season. I'm, of course, speaking of Deacon Jones, who passed away late last night. Former Los Angeles Ram great, Hall of Famer. He was already in the Hall of Fame by the time I was even born. So, he's certainly before my time. But, I don't think you can be a fan of football and not know about Deacon Jones and the head slap. And it's a sad day for football fans everywhere, Rams fans, Charger fans, yeah. What are your thoughts on Deacon Jones, Scott?
Deacon Jones is probably one of my favorite players to have watched. I'm too young to have watched him live, but first I do want to say rest in peace to Deacon Jones. Growing up, it was always fun to watch highlights of the old-timey football where it was Deacon Jones and trying to think of what his name is. Claude Humphrey from the Falcons. These are people that my dad talked about. He was like Claude Humphrey and Deacon Jones and Chris Dolman and obviously Dolman was later on, but just some of the best pass rushers of the era. Deacon Jones he's probably the second best pass rusher of all time. I'd say the only guy better than him is Bruce Smith. And that's only because Bruce Smith, he was J.J. Watt before J.J. Watt came around. He was that beast 5 technique that nobody could stop. And I think, Deacon Jones was a big reason why he was so successful. Because without a guy like Deacon Jones to open up the idea to this big, violent defensive end, the position was just going to be these guys who set the edge in the run game and never really got after the passer. He basically revolutionized defenses. He was one of the first guys to truly play. He was one of the first guys to truly play an effective, what I like to call six technique, or what's called the six technique. He would line up in between that C gap, and you couldn't get past him in the run game. And in the passing game, he would just blow up right tackles all day. He was the first strong side pass rusher that was that dominant. Mm-hmm. So I was a big fan of Deacon Jones. I still am a big fan of Deacon Jones.
May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace, and may the Falcons somehow find his clone.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's probably the best thing I can say, And it's not like he was a young guy when he died, though.
Yeah, he was 74.
Yeah, 74 years old, I'm not trying to sound like an asshole here, but, I mean, he was 74 years old. He lived a great life. He had a great family. I mean, it was his time. Does it suck that he's dead? Yes, but, I mean, he's been honored in every way the NFL can honor a man. Outside of maybe his jersey being retired, but I don't think Dallas does that.
I think his jersey is retired.
No, I don't think they retired. I don't think they officially retired jerseys.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Not Dallas. I don't think the Rams do that. Sorry, I was thinking somebody else for Dallas.
Yeah, you're right about him being honored in every possible way. He was 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1980. He was on the 1960s All-Decade team. He was on the NFL's 75th anniversary all-time team, which I believe was 1995, if I'm not mistaken. When he retired, he was unofficially the NFL's all-time leading sack leader. He played during an era where sacks weren't an official stat, but he's unofficially credited with 194.5 sacks, which at the time he retired was number 1. I think today is number 3.
And he's officially credited with getting the head slap man.
Yeah. Yes, he is. He perfected it to a level where, he didn't invent it, but he perfected it to a level where it became a lethal weapon.
He was hitting people right in the ear hole. And I don't know if you ever had somebody, I mean, the head slap is banned, yes. But it still happens. I don't know if you've had somebody smack your helmet when growing up playing football. Your head just rings for like an hour. It is not fun.
Yeah, it's basically giving the offensive lineman a concussion. In today's current player safety era, I don't think he probably would have got kicked out of the league if he played today, just because he probably would have just
he would have just had to adapt.
You would have put a right tackle against him, concussion out of the game, first play. And the backup comes in, concussion right out of the game. He'd be third string center playing right tackle because he already gave the other 2 guys concussions if he played today.
I mean, I guess for me, I always feel like these guys, this guy wouldn't do great in this era because of this, and this. The guy would do fine in this era. I feel like he'd be fine in this era. He wouldn't knock out 4 different guys with concussions. But, I mean, he would be great in this era because the true greats know how to adapt and overcome and play at a high level no matter who they're up against.
Mm-hmm.
And people always say, oh, well, they wouldn't have been as athletic. Well, let's look at evolution here. I mean, I know that some states don't believe in it, but let's look at evolution here. People get bigger, better, and stronger throughout the years. So if he was born today, he would have been the same. It's the same kind of thing. He was an elite athlete then. He would have been probably an even more elite athlete now.
Mm-hmm. Instead
of talking about this freak that Marcus Hunt's going to be, it'd be Deacon Jones, and Marcus Hunt would have been the guy back in the years as some Estonian legend, I'm not saying Hunt's going to be anywhere close, but I'm just comparing frames right now. 6'6", 275, massive, strong, fast. I mean, Patrick Kearney could also be another, that strong side defensive end who should have never left Atlanta after 2007 or after 2006. But that's beside the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a great one. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier, but he had, unofficial record of 26 sacks in 1967. That's ridiculous because it was played only 14-game seasons then. So if he played a 16-game season as they do now, That's basically the equivalent of 30 sacks in a season. That's how dominant a player he was. Like, imagine, the sack record is 22 and a half, I think, Strahan got, or 21 and a half, and Brett Favre giving him a gimme. To have someone to be, basically John Abraham's worth better than the best pass rush season we've seen in modern football is amazing. So, celebrate the life of a man who terrorized Falcons quarterbacks for half a decade when he was with the Rams.
Yes.
Many of Falcons quarterbacks were in his crosshairs.
And it was only, thankfully, the Falcons only came about halfway through his era.
Yeah.
While he was with the Rams, because otherwise he would have terrorized them the entire decade.
Yes. You were absolutely right.
And he wouldn't have just terrorized the quarterbacks. He would have terrorized the right tackles.
And running backs and pretty much anybody that got in his way.
I mean, he's kind of the model that everybody looks for at defensive end.
Yep. In the 60s, he was 6'5", 260, which is, in today's football, like the perfect size for a speed rush end.
I mean, if you think about... just thinking about that size, though, that would be like a guy, 6'6", 295 today.
Mm-hmm.
So, guy who's 6'6", 295, again, back to J.J. Watt, back to that comparison. Same kind of guy, only played in a 4-man line instead of a 3-man line. They all played that strong side. They all played that 6 technique. If you really want to disrupt a quarterback, you bring in a guy who understands how to play that role, because the left side, or the left end, is way more important than a right end in the pass rush. Just like the middle is more important than the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's always easier, and it's always going to be easier, to attack a right tackle with a pass rush. Because right tackles don't understand pass protection as well as they understand run protection, unless you've got a great one like a Tyson Clabo or a I'm blanking here. There's like 3 really good right tackles in the league. Brian Bulaga, when he's healthy, I think is probably the best, probably top 2 with Clabo.
I'd probably say Kareem McKenzie when he was in his prime in New York.
Yeah, Kareem McKenzie in his prime. Because, even Anthony Davis is not a good pass protector. Andre Smith up in Cincinnati, not really a great pass protector. Even Sebastian Vollmer, not a great pass protector. Good, no doubt, but not great. I think the closest guy I would say to Clabo right now is Gosder Cherylus up in Detroit. He was just a wall. And he was a really good wall, but he was just a wall up in pass protection. I'd love to see what Roger Saffold does this year in St. Louis. I think Sam Bradford owes our old buddy Les Snead a couple beers, some wings, naming his firstborn child Les. For, basically giving him a hookup. It was like he went into the West Coast Customs shop. I was like, you know what? I'm going to pimp your offense. What's he do? He gives him some badass racing stripes and Tavon Austin and Stedman Bailey. Add some Jared Cook in there. That's the satellite TV in the car. Hooks up his offensive line with actual talent by bringing in Jake Long. You move Saffold over to right tackle. That kills 2 birds, because Saffold always played better on the right side. When the weakest spot that they have on that line is left guard and Shelley Smith. Shelley Smith is at least serviceable. He's at least Garrett Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they've got Scott Wells and Harvey Dahl as well on that line. And then they drafted Barrett Jones, who may not play for half the season, but once he comes in, he's probably taking over at left guard. They've got talent. They've got a lot of talent there.
Yeah. You know,
I think they could be the best offense in the NFC West. So, anyway, outside of Chuck Smith, we're also going to be joined today by D.Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and it looks like we've got him on the phone. Welcome to the show, Daryl.
Hey, welcome, Aaron and Scott. How are you guys doing this evening?
you're doing good.
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous.
That's great to hear. So D-Led, Scott, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, you were at OTAs this past week. Who stood out to you the most? I mean, I know it's OTAs, but who stood out the most?
Well, the rookie quarterback, Robert Alford, looked at ease in the secondary over there. So that was one of the obvious ones of the young guys who looked pretty comfortable a little bit early. Some of the offensive linemen look like they're coming along. Peter Collins looks like he's in control. They're going to be asking him to take over at center there. And then just the sheer size and girth of Taron Jones. He's a tackle from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He's like 6'5", 6'6", 340 pounds. He's just a real massive young man there. And he kind of stood out at the OTAs last week also. They'll be going again in the morning here. That'll be open to the public, so we'll have some fresh things to report tomorrow.
All right, that's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That is pretty awesome.
So D-Led, all right, can I call you D-Led?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. A lot of buzz is circling about the Falcons going after Richard Seymour, and we've heard recently in the last 24 hours or so that contract talks with Seymour are sort of in a holding pattern. Can you shed any more light on that?
They had to wait to get some room for Tyson Clavo dropped off the cap on June 1st. That took them down to $4.4 million, and they have like $6.4 to spend, but they've got 3 rookies to sign, and they still have Matt Ryan's extension to work out. So they'll have enough money if they, take care of the rookies and then get Matt Ryan's deal done. They just have to kind of work through that part, and the timing's something that'll have to be worked out. But there certainly is some interest. Thomas Dimitrov said he still can play, and they don't want to bring in veterans here who don't contribute, and they believe he can still play. So there appears to be some interest there, and we're just going to have to let that plane land when it's time.
Comrade does like to take his time on these deals, doesn't he?
What was the question, Scott?
Comrade likes to take his time on these deals, doesn't he?
Not really. He doesn't even do much with them. It's more Nick Polk and so forth. And, they certainly have Rich McKay at their disposal for any salary cap issues and so forth. So the Comrade's just really signing off at the end there. He's more of the concept, big picture guy as opposed to the nuts and bolts, working the numbers type of guy.
Okay. I didn't know that it was Nick Polk that was doing the contract negotiations more than it was Dimitrov.
Oh yeah. Nick's the Nick's the main man he's the main numbers man. He just got the big promotion there and talked to all the agents on behalf of the team, and Dimitrov pretty much tells him what he wants and he gets it done.
That's pretty awesome.
Okay. You talked about Matt Ryan's extension, D-Led. Do we have like a ballpark? Is there like an over-under date on when that when that's going to go down? Is that going to be, next month for training camp?
Yeah, I think I figured out the landing period for that. Based on just a lot of off the record stuff with folks. They're going to work the through the end of June here to the 20th. They got OTAs the next 2 weeks, and then the mini camp on 18th through the 20th. Then that'll end their kind of football portion of the off season, and then the business guys can kind of zero in on tightening up the business aspects of Ryan's deal, getting the rookies situated, and then if there are any adjustments, if they drafted some guys or signed some players they don't like, there might be some opportunity to cut some people and add some more. But after June the 20th and before training camp is where we're expecting these deals to start to get done and so forth. That's just the best we can nail it down at this point.
Okay. Is that the same for Seymour too?
Yeah, but the Seymour camp, they can't all be done at the same time because Ryan's cap number is $12 million. Depending on how that deal goes down, his deal could be about his cap number is the key thing for this year in Seymour. Flacco's number went down from 14 to 7. So if Ryan's goes down from 12 to 6 or 7, then that gives them another $5 million on top of this 6-4 they had. The rookie should take up 3 of that. So if I'm doing my fast math here, there's $8 million left. So you like to leave some room there in case people get hurt and you can go sign some folks. But, those Richard Seymour doesn't want $10, $12 million. Maybe he comes and plays for 5 or 6. Something like that's available for him. But if he wants the old type of defensive line money that was out there flying around a couple of years ago, he might not. He might decide to, hang up his cleats here.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty good. I mean, so it sounds like they probably are going to get something done with Ryan. It looks like they probably are going to get something done with Seymour, but they're just taking their time because that's what they like to do. Obviously they're going to sign the rookies because the new collective bargaining agreement just makes it ridiculously easy to sign these guys.
Right.
Now, do you know if Trufant is going to be there for this next OTA?
No, he won't. They are set to graduate June the 16th, I believe it is. So he'll miss. I think the whole deal here, but be ready in time for minicamp. He'll be here for the whole minicamp. But they've been Skyping him into the meetings and making sure he's at least getting the mental aspects of the workouts. And so he's a sharp kid. He'll know what he's supposed to do. But, as far as getting reps and bonding with the team and getting reps against NFL-level receivers on a regular basis, that stuff's going to have to happen for him in the mini camp that's coming up, and then later, when he gets in for the full training camp. So it's kind of an unconventional way to get them ready, but, they can't change the rules on the whether kids are graduated from college or not. So they're just trying to do the best they can to get him ready to play as fast as possible.
Okay. Now, one thing I've been kind of playing out in my head is how the cornerback depth chart is going to look.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very possible that we could see, Robert Alford and Desmond Trufant at points in the season start at corner. Depending on how fast these guys get up to speed, of course. Do you think that the goal is to have, but I mean, regardless of that for this season, do you think that the goal is to have those two up to speed by the end of the season so that they could cut Asante Samuel after it?
Well, I mean, Asante's getting older. They as long as he can keep playing, I think he's got 2 more years left. So, they do have to plan for him, not being here at some point, whether it's next year or or the year after. So, yeah, they definitely hope that they've drafted their cornerbacks of the future. The depth chart, I haven't done one in a while. I probably need to do one there, but I think if I had to do it right now, I would certainly going to have a true find out there at the right, Asante left. I would keep McLean at nickel to start the season, just because Robert Alford's making such a big jump up to from southeastern Louisiana. So, I'd have those four. Then, Dominique Franks is in the mix there still. He can play both sides and the nickel, so he's valuable in that regard. So I think those would be my top five. Keeping an eye on Peyton Thompson, the Terrence Johnson kid that was here for a little bit last year. Those are two kids that have been around, and Terrence had a shot there with the Colts in 2011, I believe, and got some NFL action. So don't want to rule him out as a possibility either. So that quarterback situations, they spend a lot of time on it. They invested a lot of draft intelligence gathering on it, and that's going to be key that they get that right this season. Otherwise, if that doesn't work out for them, they could be in pretty big trouble back there.
Okay. Speaking of depth charts, I read that the Falcons opened the starting lineup with offensive line with Mike Johnson at right tackle and Garrett Reynolds at right guard. And as you mentioned, Peter Collins has now moved to center. Do you think we're going to see any shifting of that depth chart so that we might see a different starting five going into 2013?
Yeah, I always go back and look at the OTA lineups and the ones, and I remember Renardo Foster was starting one year because somebody was hurt, and it was it's just been bizarre. But Coach Smith and them pretty much stayed true, so I could see Lamar Holmes maybe beating out Johnson, or Johnson maybe beating out Reynolds. A lot of people were keeping an eye on Philip Keith Manley, but it looks like he, has come back and is not in shape and so forth. We're going to try to get to the bottom of that this week. But I certainly don't think that line is firm right now. I don't think they're ready to go into a game with that line. So we're going to see that play out in training camp. Coach Smith said this is going to be the most competition they've had since 2008. And they're going to make those guys earn those spots. There could be a couple long shots in the mix, too. They signed a lot of very big-bodied athletes. Coach Smith said he likes Harlan Gunn and Jock McClendon, too, are just big old sturdy guys. They got to keep Matt Ryan upright. But Coach Smith, when he wants to run the ball, he wants to be able to get a yard on 4th and 1. And, they've been pretty shoddy here the last couple of years in short yardage situations. So if these guys get some big, mean, nasty guys up there that can get that done, I think they're going to probably try to do that this year. So if you want to see a line that could protect number 2, and then also a line that's going to be able to bust Steven Jackson into the second level. They haven't been able to do that in a couple of years in Atlanta with the Falcons, and that might be a missing link that would help the offense even more.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, speaking offensive line, one of my personal favorite players on it has been Joe Hawley. Has there been any talk of him possibly starting? Like, is he actually competing? Or is it pretty much they're handing it to Collins and Hawley is just the backup for, 2 to 3 spots on the line?
Yeah, Hawley, Coach Smith, when I was out at his Wounded Warriors event at Lake Lanier, we were kind of going through the lineups and so forth, he did mention Hawley as a competitor for the starting center position. But I think realistically, he'd have to beat out Peter. And, he'd have a long way to go to do that. He has played. He started, a great deal in 2012. So he can certainly get out there and mash it up with folks. I like him a lot too. But he might be your swing guy that can be active on Sundays. If you need any help at guard or center, he's available. So you don't want to go into the games with Justin Blaylock as your backup center. Although he's the third center in the emergency on Sundays. So Holly certainly feels very valuable, even if he can't beat out Peter. But Coach Smith did mention him unsolicited to me out there at Lake Lanier for the Wounded Warriors event.
So let's say that just by an off chance, the situation I've been playing it in my head is Holly shocks people the way that McLean did last year and beats, earns the starting spot at center. Do they move Cons to right guard?
That could be a possibility. I didn't entertain that one there. This Aaron or Scott?
Scott.
Scott, that's a good one, Scott. I do know that the interior of the pocket has to be firmed up. And if that's the best combination, that's what a lot of people haven't thrown out there. I'll start asking around about that. If that's the best two, because you've got to keep the front of that pocket firm for number two. And so far, Garrett Reynolds has had a couple shots at and hasn't been able to hold it down. And then when you look at the money that they paid him this offseason, you could kind of see that wasn't starter money that they paid him. So they might have paid him to be a backup and kind of an emergency guy in case things don't work out there at the front, at the right guard for him.
That was my thoughts on Reynolds, is that he's probably brought back as a long-term backup.
Right.
A couple of years, because his average contract year is about $1 million, which in today's NFL is nothing.
Right, that's backup money for sure, and that's certainly what it says about him. But Coach said he made a point, again, unsolicited, that they really like him and, want to see if he can make it back from his back surgery. And maybe that was a contributing factor into the low salary they gave him. But, I kind of, just reading the tea leaves there, it doesn't look like he's going to be or they certainly didn't pay him like that you normally would your starting right guard this offseason. So, the Holly Cons thing is very intriguing out there. I do know they drafted Cons to be the center of the future, but they said that about Holly too a couple of years ago. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one certainly.
Well, and I was just thinking because Holly is. I don't know if you've ever seen that link that Bill Walsh put up, but Holly kind of fits that prototype. That prototype Bill Walsh, like 6'3", 305-pound, bowling ball in the middle, can move well. And then last year in the preseason, they had them both play with the second unit. And it was Holly at center and Cons at right guard. And whenever they ran the halfback screens and those two pulled out together, they just looked like they were ready to go. They were busting heads. I mean, I know it's preseason, but they looked like they were in sync with each other. And then this past year, we never saw them on the field together. So
and we didn't see him on the field last week either. But we'll keep an eye out for that because you make a good point about them moving. That's a big key for Cutter's offense. You got to get outside and hit some people when they run those stretch plays and the screens and so forth. Being able to move and hit moving targets, that certainly sounds like a better combination than a Kuntz-Garrett combination. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's an astute observation, and we better monitor that here heading into the OTAs, minicamp, and training camp.
Okay. I wanted to switch a little bit of gears just to ask you a quick question about the tight end situation. Is it true that Tony Gonzalez has basically worked it into his contract that he's going to skip all of training camp? Or was that just a rumor?
No. I don't believe that was part of the deal. He had some family obligations that he wanted to be excused for, is my understanding, and he has been in the building and checked in and so forth for the off-season program to get his target weights and everything. But yeah, he's been excused to some degree from some of this off-season stuff. But I think training camp, that's not the case. He likes to practice, quite frankly, and they have to make him take his days off. Coach Smith has that over 30 club and orders some of the 30-year-old guys to take some days off. And Tony never really likes to take his. He hasn't taken them in the past. But maybe this year he'll take some of those over 30 days off that Coach Smith likes to give his older guys.
Okay. It didn't sound like Tony when I heard it, but I just wanted to make sure that it sounded weird for even a player of his status to miss training camp. You got to work on that timing with the quarterback, even though he's had a couple of years to get it down. But
yeah.
Okay. Well, D.Orlando, I want to get you out on this last question. What's the what's the temperature of the building in Flowery Branch? Do the Falcons brass, really think this is going to be their year? Because, a lot of the offseason additions, Steven Jackson, O.C. Moore, if they end up getting Richard Seymour, aren't exactly long-term solutions. So is it really like the Falcons are trying to make a push to, push all their chips all in for this season?
Oh, yeah, the temperature is somewhat tempered. They know that if they get everything right, they'll have a shot at that. When I mean that, they're rebuilding the line, which started last year, and they're trying to fabricate the defensive line and get some pressure up there. Tighter coverage and pressure on the quarterback were the themes of the off-season with the draft. 6 of the 8 picks were defensive guys, 4 defensive backs, 2 defensive ends. It's pretty clear that they have to get better on that side of the ball if they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. So they know that, they're in the hunt, but just how much in the hunt, will depend on if they get everything right with those 2 major projects, and also with the defensive, getting the line right, which we talked about a lot earlier. They have a great offense, but to win the Super Bowl, you need a little bit more from the defense. And you saw how the defense collapsed in the playoffs last year, giving up a 20-point lead, a 20 and a 17-point lead. So, that's why Dimitrov came out and addressed that Super Bowl or bust talk. Roddy went on one of the shows talking about this year's Super Bowl or bust for the Falcons, and Dimitrov usually doesn't come out and address stuff like that, but he wanted to temper that enthusiasm a little bit because he knows that they got some major projects under works that they, the personnel man and the scouting department have to hit on these draft picks this year. And the linemen in the last couple of years are going to have to play. So they're waiting to see how that works out, and that's going to determine, if they can make a push to get back to the playoffs and then get into the Super Bowl and, maybe end this thing next season up in New York.
All right.
Well, actually, New Jersey, where the Super Bowl will be played at, is actually New Jersey, not New York.
Okay.
It's the same thing. Even though New Jersey would probably hate us for saying that, that's the way Southerners view it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, thank you for your time, Orlando. It was great having you on.
Folks can find you on Twitter at AJC Falcons and D.Orlando LED.
Well, all right, Scott and Aaron, thanks for having me on your radio blog show here, and I certainly appreciate your time.
All right.
Thanks for coming on.
Take care. All righty. Bye now.
Bye. That was D.Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He has got the job that I want when he's done with it.
Yeah. You're just gonna borrow it from him for a couple of years?
No. I'm saying when he's like, oh, I'm done. I'm only 24, so I mean, when he's like, oh, I'm done, I'll probably be like 30. You know, I don't mind waiting 6 years.
Okay. All right.
Or they could hire me to be his backup guy now. I'd have no problem with that.
The understudy? Okay. I look forward to that, Scott. In 6 years, I look forward to, well, I won't be opening up a newspaper because they won't exist in 6 years, but, you know, clicking on the internet and reading your Atlanta Journal-Constitution stories. And I can be like, you know, he's there all because of me. You know, I carried him through the Falcons Central radio show, so, you know, I should get a little bit of props. But you know.
I mean, there's moments when you carry it, and then there's moments when I carry it. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, that's true. I know.
We both have our, like, oh, what am I going to say next thing?
Yeah.
And oh, Brian. Our producer's chatting saying that Aaron and my dog will be next week's host. No, they won't.
Wow. You know, I think we should have your dog on as a guest. See what he thinks about, you know, Matt Ryan's contract and, you know, whether he should get, you know, 40 million guaranteed, 50 million guaranteed.
Right now, the dog is passed out on the bed under the blanket. So, oh man.
Well, you know, I think D-Led shared some good insight with you know, the thing that really perked my ears up was the whole talk about the contract negotiation with Matt Ryan's deal, and you know, sounds like, you know, probably won't hear anything on that front for a couple of weeks, but you know, after that mandatory mini camp, which I think he was referring to, which was June 18th or so.
Yeah, it's either June 18th or June 20th.
Yeah. So, you know, we might be hearing something on both the Matt Ryan front and the Richard Seymour front, starting in late June, early July.
See, I think Richard Seymour, we're going to start hearing it ramp up mid to late this week, just from a couple things I've been hearing. And then it's going to be, but I'm hearing this more from Richard's side than the team side.
Mm-hmm.
Because I try to get a source from both sides before I confirm anything. There's been mutual interest there since, you know, March. Since he was told by the Raiders, hey, we're going to cut you. They told him back in early March that they were going to cut him. They knew they were going to cut him. So they knew they were going to take a $13 million dead money hit just to get rid of him. Which that team's going to be in great situation.
Raiders are a bad football team. I was looking at their roster today.
My God, they're so.
If they win 4 games, you know, Dennis Allen should be coach of the year.
If they win 2 games, Dennis Allen should be coach of the year. I think they could legitimately go 0-16.
Yeah.
But to be fair, with that number 1 pick, they can take that franchise quarterback. With that franchise quarterback, they can actually come back and be relevant. I mean, they've got some talent on that team, and they've got so much cap space the next, 10 years. They've got, $85 million next year, $100 the next, almost the entire cap the next. They don't have anybody signed past 3 years. That entire roster is what we call a rebuilt shit roster. There's no other way to put it. Their starting defensive line is going to be a group of journeymen and backups from other teams. It's probably going to be Andre Carter, Lamar Houston, the winner of the Vance Walker-Pat Sims battle, and Jason Hunter from Denver. You know, their linebacking core is 3 mid-level three low-level free agents that were signed. Their cornerback, the only thing that they have on their defense that says, hey, we're in it for the long haul, is the combination of DJ Hayden and Tyvon Branch on the left side in the defensive backcourt. That's it.
Yeah, and I've heard that Tyvon Branch was a hair away from getting cut this offseason because of the big contract that he got from under Al Davis a couple of years back. So I think he had to renegotiate his deal just to stick around. So he may not be there long term.
He may not be there long term. No.
Yeah. So basically, DJ Hayden, and that's and Lamar Houston. Lamar Houston's a good player, but.
Well, yeah, Lamar Houston's going to be there. I think C.O. Moore, who they took in the third round this year, is going to be there, going to be a good player. I mean, they've got talent in Oakland. It's just going to take a couple years. They're building it the right way, though. They didn't see a top-tier quarterback in this year's draft, so they didn't take one. They took – I don't know if you've ever watched Glee.
I don't know if I want to admit that I've seen an episode, but I have seen an episode.
I mean, I had an ex-girlfriend who loved the show.
Sure.
So I saw the first 4 seasons.
Yeah, ex-girlfriend. Okay, yeah.
Yes, ex-girlfriend. Well, there's a very hot Spanish cheerleader on it that's played by Naya Rivera. Her little brother's on that team now. And he played at Tennessee, and he's really good.
Oh, Michael Rivera.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not know they were related.
Yeah, that's it. That's her little brother. So we got to figure out how to be friends with him.
All right, yeah. No,
and then they drafted Menelik Watson out of Florida State. That's going to be a good long-term right tackle. But no, I mean they've got talent. They've got good talent on their offensive line. They've got some speedy receivers to build around. They've got Darren McFadden. And then they've got a bunch of big holes, especially on their defense. But there's talent that they can build around. I think they could build around Vance Walker on the defensive line.
Yeah, I think Vance Walker is a pretty solid piece. I think, he's ideally a third defensive tackle as opposed to a starter. Same thing goes for Pat Sims. So,
Well, they're going to rotate them in pretty heavily.
Mm-hmm.
The way that when you've got Lamar Houston and Pat Sims and Vance Walker, you run them all in that 60-60-60 rotation that Atlanta ran. 60%, 60%, 60%. Mm-hmm. And everybody's happy. Everybody gets playing time. Nobody's complaining because they all feel like a starter because they're all always on the field. The times that they're not on the field, they're sitting there, they're going, oh my God, I'm about to die because they're breathing so hard. It allows your defensive line to go hard every play, too. I'm a big fan of rotations on defensive line.
You got to have it.
I mean, I think Atlanta's going to have a very, very good one this year if they can sign Seymour. I think Pere Jerry should be cut in that case, but I think if they sign Seymour, you've got Seymour, Babineau, and Peters as the main guys in the rotation. And then for your 20% guy, that fourth guy, you've got Travian Robertson,
mm-hmm.
who's a beast. Or you leave him inactive, and you can use Malachi Goodman as that fourth guy. Or even Cliff Matthews as that fourth guy. Or even Croy Bierman as that fourth guy. And I think they're gonna keep the 6 defensive ends that they have on the roster right now. The 6 legitimate defensive ends. I'm not talking with Brandon Thurman or Cam Henderson.
Yeah.
No offense to Brandon Thurman or Cam Henderson. I know a camp body when I see it.
Yeah, they got some practice squad developmental talent, but they're not. They're very, very long shots to make the roster.
Yeah, they're not, unless they just ball out and they do something that no one's ever seen before in camp. They're not making the roster. I mean, the talent's just not there. The ability for the amount of time and the amount of ability that they need to make the roster just isn't there. Mm-hmm. Just like Andrew Zerba and Adam Nisley. They're not making the roster. Not in a long shot. Tommy Gallardo probably isn't making the roster, and this is a tight end. You know, you've probably got Tony Gonzalez, Chase Kaufman, and Levine Toilolo. That's it. That's who's going to make the roster at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then hopefully Ryan's contract isn't a distraction so that he can just go in and take as many reps as possible. I don't see it being a distraction just because of how, when you look at how, at his character, at his, I just want to go out there and play football personality, I don't really see it being an issue. I think he's going to go in every day. He's going to let his agent negotiate the deal. Once his agent says, yep, we've got something, Ryan's going to come in, sign, and leave. Take his nice big signing bonus check, celebrate with his wife, and that'll be it. That's his personality. His personality isn't, oh, give me this clause and give me that clause and give me this clause. His personality is the agent's going to handle it. I'm going to go practice with the team. Everybody's going to be happy. Let's go win the Super Bowl, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
I was going to say, I think he's going to sign for quite a bit less than people are projecting to. Because I've heard as much as $23 million a year is what the projections are. But I think that's going to be the max value. I think the base value of the contract is going to be $18 million a year unless the Falcons win the Super Bowl. Unless the Falcons win the Super Bowl, you know, he's league MVP, like that 23 to $25 million a year, that it's going to be like, that's going to be the big number that's going to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the max, like, hey, if he hits every single incentive, if he throws for 4,500 yards and 50 touchdowns and, you know, this, and this, we're going to have to pay him $25 million this year. Well, you know what? If he's throwing for 4,500 yards, 50 touchdowns, the Falcons win the Super Bowl, he's worth $25 million. You know?
Yeah, I agree.
He's every penny of $25 million if all that happens. Because that's what a Super Bowl winning quarterback deserves to be paid.
Correct.
So,
you know,
I don't see...
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, you know, I'm thinking it's probably going to be, you know, base maybe $20 million just because I think him and his agent, or should I say his agent, Tom Condon, is probably going to be like, you know, saying that that's what he could get on the open market if he was a free agent, you know, right now.
Oh, let's be fair. Let's be fair here. Of the top 7 quarterbacks salary-wise, which is where he's projected to be, he's the only one without a Super Bowl ring. And when you're the only guy without a Super Bowl ring, I hate to say it this way, if you don't have the ring, you're not worth what the other guys are getting paid. Not as a base value. Now, maybe an escalator clause to where, hey, once he wins a Super Bowl, he gets paid that base 20. But, you know, I think 18 is where the base is going to be.
You know, I would like, you know, 18 would be nice. I just think he can go to the table and basically say, we're not taking a dime under 20. You know, Flacco got 20.1 and, you know, we're worth 100,000 or whatever less than Joe Flacco. And, you know, he would be right in saying that if the Falcons let Ryan walk, you know, as a free agent, his contract is up after the season in that hypothetical situation, because it will never happen. But he could be able to get at least 20, if not, he probably could get a lot more than that if he was able to not get a deal done. So, you know, I think the Falcons will ultimately pay him that. And, you know, I think the more interesting aspect of the contract is going to be how much money he's paid in the first 3 and 4 years, because the reality is he's not going to see the full size of that contract. It's going to get renegotiated after a certain time period, like we've seen with Tom Brady, who's had like 3 or 4 renegotiations in the last 10 or 11 years.
That's another thing, because I don't think that it is going to be a huge amount that first 3 or 4 years. At least not in terms of cap hit. he might get a $20 million bonus that's spread out over X number of years, and they might have a $15 million option bonus that's spread over the remainder. But if his first 2-year cap hits, they'll probably be maybe, 6 and 12, which would be more than manageable, especially considering who is not under contract for next year. After 2013, after the 2013 season, there's the big Matt Ryan deal. And then, you've got the core of the team under contract. You've got Levine Toilolo. If Chase Kaufman balls out, you can pay him. At offensive tackle, you've got Baker and Holmes and Johnson. Or you got Baker and Holmes under contract. At guard/center, you've got Cons and Blaylock under contract. And Reynolds. I mean, you might have the entire starting offensive line still under contract. Now, if Johnson or Hawley wins the job, you could probably sign them back pretty cheaply. The big question is who plays defensive tackle. But next year's defensive tackle class is ridiculously good. I mean,
you're talking about draft or free agency?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, you can bring in defensive tackles. But, I mean, when you look at the projected starting depth chart, that's the only hole outside of maybe offensive line that's going to be, needing to be replaced. I mean, of course you can say tight end, but everybody knows that coming into it. Everybody knows that Tony Gonzalez is not coming back for another year. And as it sits right now, they're projected to have $27 million in cap space. Now, get rid of 12 of that for Ryan. You've got $15 million in cap space. Yeah, that's not a lot, but it's more than enough to sign your draft picks. It's more than enough to bring back a guy like Chase Kaufman, bring back a guy like, Joe Hawley, bring back a guy like Mike Johnson, keep that depth in place. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to see Atlanta keep a pretty good roster together for at least 2 or 3 years the way the cap situation looks. They've got it almost perfectly planned out to absorb huge hits in 2015, 2016, and 2017. Like upwards of $20 million, if not more, they could easily absorb in the Ryan deal. So I think when they structure it, those are going to be the years they take huge hits. Because they've got $91 million in cap space in 2016. They've got nobody signed, but they've got $90 million in cap space. Now they've got another 68 in 2015. Yeah, you've got to worry about Roddy White and, Julio Jones, both not going to be under contract. You got to worry about the Weatherspoon deal that year. Akeem Dent will come off. I mean, but there's time between now and then. That's 2 years from now. So you don't worry about that kind of stuff when you've got over $60 million in cap space because you can afford to figure it out then. I mean, you're going to give Julio Jones a massive contract. You're going to give, Roddy White, he might not get a massive contract because he's going to be winding down at that point. But why not give him something like what Marvin Harrison got late in his career? That 4-year, $15 million deal. Because that's going to be about where he's at. That's pretty much his career track right now is Torrey Holt and Marvin Harrison. And they took lesser deals after their big money deal went out when they were 32 and 33 years old. And I think by then, if the Falcons win back-to-back Super Bowls, Roddy White might even just retire. Especially if he matches the record for... Now, this is an obscure record, I know. But there's only been 2 players in the history of the NFL to have 8 straight seasons of 80-plus catches, 1,100-plus yards, and 6-plus touchdowns. Torrey Holt and Jerry Rice. With 2 more seasons of 80-plus catches, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns, Roddy White will join them. I think you could say that is a consistent, effective receiver threat. Never had huge injuries, and he was doing this with Andre Johnson in the league. He was doing this with Larry Fitzgerald in the league, the same way that Torrey Holt was a guy compared to the old receivers like Terrell Owens and Randy Moss. The guys we've got now are pretty mild and tame. You don't have the big loudmouths. Most of these guys have Torrey Holt's personality. Or they have Marvin Harrison's personality before he got caught in that drug ring. So, or not drug ring, that gun ring. So you've got the talent, you've got the people out there who can break this record and make these records, but I think long term, you do have to think Roddy White is going to sign, and he's not going to take a shit ton of money from people, or from the Falcons.
Yeah,
No.
it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Because, you mentioned Julio's contract, and, who knows what the wide receiver market's going to be. But, based off of, I think what Mike Wallace got like $70 million. I think Calvin Johnson got like $110 million or something like that. So that's probably in the ballpark. That range is probably where we're talking about potentially Julio Jones's contract being. I think it would be like 25 in 2015 or something like that. So he's going to have like, another 7, 8,
He'll be
9
like
years
26
left.
or 27. He'll be young.
Yeah, still, a player of his caliber can play at a high level till he's 34, 35, 36. So, yeah, so he might be able to play another decade. So he's going to be very well compensated. So, the thing about Roddy is going to be, if you're going to pay, just ballparking, Julio Jones $85 million over, 6 years or something. How much then are you going to be willing to spend on Roddy, who probably will still be a good receiver, but clearly won't be the impact player that he has been for, the last 6 years? Where you kind of put that price tag, and where does Roddy, Roddy's not,
And that's where the Torrey Holt and Jerry Rice comparisons continue, because once they finished that 8-year streak, they were bad. Like, all pretty awful. Like, barely starting caliber. They would get maybe 600, 700 yards as the number one receiver on their team in a good year. So
another good comparison would be what Hines Ward became the last few years he was in Pittsburgh, where he kind of wasn't the guy that he once was, but he was kind of strictly a slot receiver because his talent, I guess, age kind of caught up with him, so he couldn't really be that impact outside receiver that he was earlier in his career.
They also didn't pay him much. Like, Hines Ward made the most of his money in his prime, and then he decided to, flare down.
Mm-hmm.
I could see the same thing happening with Roddy White. He'll make most of his money now, that $8, $10, $12 million a year, and then he's going to flare down because it's what happens to receivers once they get older. If you don't have the same kind of speed, the same kind of cut, the same kind of burst, you're going to flare down. You're going to be easier to cover. Unless your name's Tony Gonzalez, who is just magical. The man defies age. He's out there looking like he's 26 or 27 years old, still in his prime. He never really had a great, huge, amazing burst, but he did have the ability to cut the seams. He did have the ability to just find the perfect spot in the defense and just wait there for the ball. And he still does it. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. I love watching him play.
Yeah. No one boxes out defenders quite like Tony Gonzalez. Taking his basketball roots, become basically a power forward over the middle. Just throwing the alley-oop, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Throw him the alley-oop. Or, on an even better note, This is why I say you want to take at tight end, you want a power forward. At receiver, you want a guy who probably played small forward, Julio Jones. You want your shooting guard, Roddy White, and then you want your point guard. Just in terms of like the athletic profile. And your point guard's your slot man. Athletically, I think Julio Jones could be a damn good small forward. I think Roddy White would be a damn good shooting guard. Could they shoot? I don't know. I'm just saying, could they play defense in these positions all day? And then Harry Douglas, could he play the point? Probably. Defensively, at least. Again,
he's got a little Mario Chalmers in him, I guess.
Or his brother.
Oh, yeah, Tony Douglas. I forgot
But I don't see I don't see Harry Douglas having a huge year this year. And honestly, I could see Harry Douglas getting jumped this year on the depth chart.
You don't, or you do see that?
I could see it.
Okay.
It would not shock me to see anyone from Drew Davis to from Drew Davis to James Rodgers to Darius Johnson jumping him. Maybe even Marcus Jackson. Because sometimes with these college free agents from those D3 and D2 schools like Lamar, sometimes all they need is just reps with an actual NFL caliber team. I don't even know where Lamar is. I know I probably sound stupid for saying this, but Texas?
Maybe? I think it is in Texas. Somewhere in East Texas, I think. Like in the Houston area. That's a guess, though.
Lamar Cardinals football. Let's see who they play.
I did like Marcus Jackson a lot last year. He seemed to, in the preseason, he seemed to be the one guy, working with, the third string, second string, second half players that was consistently getting open. And, that's what you look for. People talk about height and speed and hands and all that stuff, but really the one skill that you really need to be an NFL receiver is get open. Well, whether you do that because you're bigger than everybody, whether you do that because you're faster than everybody, whether you're quicker, whatever, whether you're the best route runner, doesn't really matter. But the bottom line is you got to get open. And I thought Jackson did a pretty good job of doing that. And, that's something worth seeing where that develops. See if he makes any big leaps this summer.
All right, I just put it on a map on Google Maps. Lamar is it is on I-10 in between Louisiana and Houston.
Okay.
Like Baton Rouge and Houston, if you want big cities.
Okay. East Texas. Okay. I was pretty close.
Right by Port Arthur. I don't really know where that is exactly, but yeah, East Texas.
Port Arthur, home of Jonathan Babineau and
yes.
Jordan Babineau.
That is why that name sounded familiar. So there you go. He might be kin to the Babineaus.
I hope Mrs. Babineau doesn't have to add a third jersey to her double jersey, I guess.
I've been hoping for years for Jordan to sign with the Falcons because I just want her to have two random numbers.
Yeah.
Like a 9 and a 6. The people would be like, no, 96 is, Massaquoi or 25. And be like, no, that's William Moore. Like,
yeah. Come
on. We know who this lady is. This is Babineau's mom. This is Mama Bino.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Jordan Babineau too.
And Oklahoma Panhandle State. And Southeastern Louisiana. And Nichols, Northwestern State, and Stephen F. Austin. I think Lamar is actually D1 AA, if I had to guess just looking at their schedule. Conference, no clue. But D1 AA sounds about right. They're not SoCon, which is like the SEC for those who don't follow college football past the BCS. Southeastern Louisiana was actually a really good school. And I think if my boy Cortez Allen can play for the Steelers as their starting left cornerback this year, I think we'll be fine with a more athletic player in Robert Alford on the Falcons. And I'm a huge fan of my boy Cortez. Not a Steelers fan, but I'm a fan of, the guys who I went to school with actually doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an interesting thing is if Roddy White leaves after 2014, there's a contract that comes up after 2013. And he is a Citadel guy. And with the amount of draft picks that they've spent in Arizona, I don't see them keeping him after this year. That name's Andre.
Yeah, I figured you were talking about him. I heard they were thinking about trading him, actually, this offseason. I heard that rumor, that he would be on the trade block.
He was never on the trade block.
Okay.
The new staff likes him, but the new staff doesn't like him enough to start him because they'd rather have Michael Floyd. That leaves the dilemma of, okay, he's back in the slot. He's taking a decreased role. If he comes to Atlanta, plays for a year in the slot, and then moves outside, he could be that number one across from Julio Jones. And knowing how he works, he'd be a great fit. It would be an absolutely great fit. Yeah, Lamar plays in the Southland against Central Arkansas and McNeese State and Stephen F. Austin and, guess what, Southeastern Louisiana.
Okay, good we got that nailed down.
So Robert Alford played against our boy Marcus Jackson in college and probably shut him down.
That'll be interesting tape to look at to see how that battle went. Yeah. I bet Alford did probably shut him down. I think because wasn't he was it this year or last year where he was a Buck Buchanan finalist, which is the equivalent of I don't even know, the defensive Heisman of the
Bednarik.
Yeah.
Or the Bednarik, sorry if you say it right. I'm horrible with pronunciations. I say it in my head and then it pops out and it's completely wrong. It's like whatever.
That happened to me at the beginning of the show, so I know exactly where you're coming from with that.
Thing is, though, you said my name right. You just kind of struggled with it.
Well, I had to make sure I had to pause because I wanted to make sure I got it right. I was like, in my head, I was saying it's Carasik, but yeah.
All right. Buck Buchanan finalist 2012. I'm looking that up right now because that is actually something that I want to know.
I think it was Alford that was a Buck Buchanan finalist. I may be confusing. Somebody we drafted was a Buck Buchanan finalist. I think it was Alford.
I think Alford was the only Division I AA guy that we had. Because I think everybody else was from a big school.
You're right. So it had to be Alford.
Yeah, it had to be Alford. I mean, this was like the big school draft for the Falcons. I mean, not a single SEC school, because they're probably starting to realize that SEC players grind each other down like crazy. I've been doing some research into Alabama, just how those players end up. It is not pretty. It really is just, it's not at all pretty. After about 3 years at Alabama, they take about the equivalent of 4 years worth of pro football abuse added onto their bodies, just the way Saban runs practices. Just some of the injuries that are popping up on guys like Trent Richardson right now don't happen to guys until they're in their 4th or 5th year normally in the NFL. Yeah, Washington, Clemson, Stanford, Texas Christian, Central Florida, Notre Dame, and Duke. And then Southeastern Louisiana was the only outlier. But Big 12, Pac-12, independent, ACC. You might as well consider Notre Dame ACC at this point.
Pretty much.
They're 2 steps away from being ACC full-time. They've got to play 5 games against the ACC teams this year.
Is that starting this year or is that next year? I can't.
I think it starts this year. I'm looking at their schedule now. I'm pretty sure it's exactly what. I'm pretty sure it starts this year.
Yeah, all this realignment is, my alma mater, Pitt, is moving to the ACC. So I didn't know if Notre Dame was moving with them.
Well, they're playing Pittsburgh, who's going to be in the ACC. They're not playing Boston College, so they do just have the one ACC game. But in the future, it's going to be Pittsburgh. It's going to be Pittsburgh, probably Georgia Tech, probably Boston College for sure. Miami makes sense as a permanent one, and then say Wake Forest, North Carolina State, Florida State, Clemson, just rotate through the rest of them. I feel like Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Pittsburgh are going to be that permanent. And no, you're not going until 10. So, final question before we I've been kind of going off track. Final question. Sucks that we didn't get Chuck Smith on tonight, but it happens. He must have been sleeping. Sorry, guys.
He wouldn't be
for
the
those
only one.
for those listening to the podcast, I came home tonight from work. I went and I took a nap. I woke up at 8 because of the phone call. I'm just like, oh man, my alarm didn't go off. It happens. But anyway, final question. If there is a rival on the schedule this year, who do you think is going to give the Falcons their biggest competition?
I mean, eyeball the schedule. Well, the easy answer is New Orleans. But I think it sounds like you're fishing for something else.
Not really fishing for anything. I just want an answer that's not New Orleans because the Satans don't matter.
Okay. Let's see.
I like that we get to play them at home on Turkey Day, even though it's right in the middle of a road trip that includes Canada, Green Bay, and Toronto. Schedule makers. Friggin' weird. The schedule doesn't even make logical sense. Hey, you're going to go to Tampa, and then you're going to go home, and then you're going to fly to Toronto. Then from Toronto, you're going to fly to Green Bay, and then you're going to fly home. You're going to fly cross country, and then you're going to fly home.
The game I'm probably most excited to watch, if we're going out the Saints games, would probably be the Monday night game, Week 16 in San Francisco, because it'll be interesting. We'll see how the Falcons season plays out, and hopefully they'll be in the driver's seat, the number one seed at that point in the year. But it'll be interesting to see how they play on the road, take a West Coast trip in a primetime game against the 49ers.
That could potentially be the last game in Candlestick Park, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the 49ers move into Levi's Stadium. Get this. The Levi's company paid $200 million for 20 years of naming rights. Could Atlanta not get Coca-Cola to do that for about $300 million for 30 years? I think they could.
I think so.
I think they could. Especially for that Pantheon Stadium. That palace. With the optical zoom lens at the top of the dome.
Coca-Cola pays enough money, they'll paint the thing red and make it look like a soda can that's opening up.
Or like one that's been crushed.
Yeah.
Oh, man. How cool would it be? It's a pop top.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Makes that sound every time they open it.
Sorry, I'm a huge fan of stadium stuff. Like I was a civil engineering major in college. I wrote 2 articles on stadiums this past week. One about Atlanta needing one, and then one about just the whole process of building one.
Okay. I read the one you wrote about the needing one. I didn't get to the other one, but I'm sure it was good.
The other one was just how do you build the perfect stadium? And one of them explores funding. And I know I'm going to bring up a dreaded word of personal seat license.
It is a bad word.
What if that personal seat license was more of an ownership stake? Like you get a certificate that says you're an owner of the team. You get something that says, hey, you get free access to these events. You get priority seating at these events. And it's not a personal seat license, but an ownership share. You get special benefits. I think what it is people are saying, oh, it's a PSL. I only have the right to this seat. That is not worth the money. I own the right to buy season tickets for this seat. That's not selling anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you give a guy a certificate and says that he's a part owner of the Atlanta Falcons, even if it's a 1 millionth share, you got diehards that would gladly pay a couple $100 for that.
Yep.
You could probably sell 500,000 of those.
Yep. You probably have them calling Arthur Blank every day, hassling him like, I am an owner of this team with my 1 millionth share. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they'd just be a shareholders thing. Oh, wait, you just created jobs. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I mean, probably $4, $5, $40,000 jobs, but still, you created some jobs. Again, have an ownership stake. Call these people owners. You sell them for $200 a pop. Hell, I'd buy a share, and I don't even live in Atlanta. But I'd buy a share to be like, hey, I'm an owner. Hell yeah, I'm an owner of the Falcons. Get a special owner's newsletter that says what they're up to. It would be purely symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
But would you rather have an ownership share for $200, sell $500,000 of them, make $100 million toward the stadium? That's what would happen if you sell $500,000 of them. I think it can easily be done for $200, especially with how much love is in the city for the Falcons right now. Do that, or would you rather sit there and call them PSLs and have people go, and pissed off about it?
It's a good idea. I like it.
Life is about how you sell it.
That's a good way of putting it.
If you sell it a certain way, no one's going to buy it. If you sell them as, hey, you're an owner, you get a special newsletter, and you get this and this and this, and it's a lifetime thing. You're a lifetime owner of the Falcons. You have a 1 billionth share in the team, or a 100 billionth share in the team. No one would care how many zeros. They would just say, oh, man, I own the team. Do they care in Green Bay? No.
The interesting question about that, though, is do you have to renew it every year? Because that's what, PSLs basically do, don't they?
Well, yeah, a PSL thing, that's the thing with PSLs. You have to renew them every year for that seat. Otherwise, you can sell your license back to the team. What's the point in that? It's just a way to raise money. Well, if you're going to do something that's completely symbolic to raise money, you might as well have some fun with it and call these people owners.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you made them like $2,000 instead of $200, you could probably still sell 50,000 of them, 100,000 of them. Again, it's about making money with these things. It's not about actually being, legitimate owners.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty good idea. I like it.
So, and that's just one thing that I brought up in the funding side of it. I mean, I'll send you a link because
I'll check it out.
It is one of the pet projects that I've been working on for about a week. I was waiting for something from one of my old professors, but he never got back to me. It happens. They're college professors.
Yeah. If it was my college professor, he'd probably be... The reason why he wouldn't have gotten back to me is because he was getting high somewhere.
Oh, well, mine's more of he's probably out playing golf because, well, it's Maymester and he's not working Maymester. Or it was Maymester. And he's not working late, mister. He never has. It's the one time a year he doesn't work.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. People, please, if you have any questions you want us to get to on air for next week's show, you can tweet us at my Twitter handle is @FalcFans. Scott has like 18 of them, so
I don't have 18 of them. I've got my one, and it's @Scott Carasik. I manage the Falcons, Pro Football Central account. I manage the Draft Falcons account. I manage the Kvetching Draft Mix one, but that doesn't mean that they're mine. Yes, you will catch me talking crap to Saints fans on the Falcons Pro Football Central one and on the Draft Falcons one, because there's nothing that says that I can't. I try to tone it back on my personal one because I try to keep that a little bit more professional, but you'll still catch me talking crap to other teams' fans, especially when they make stupid arguments like Breeze is going to eat up that secondary because Osi Umenora is starting on the offensive line or on the defensive line.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or you're starting 2 rookies. Yeah, did you see how shitty our secondary was last year? Come on now.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be fair here. Dante Robinson sucked, but that's a undisputed fact. Anyway, we're trying to do the sign-off.
Well, yeah, Scott @Scott Karasik, me at FalFans. We look forward to answering any questions that people may have. Any general thoughts. Me and Scott can talk about the Falcons, of course. Me and Scott also can talk about other teams or whatever. People want to tweet us questions about, I don't know, the Bucks or something, how much the Falcons are going to beat the Bucks or something. I don't know. But, we'll answer anything you guys send us.
Any college players that you want any questions on. I'm just starting to get into my scouting of linebackers. I would love to go over some of those.
Well, there you go. And I will pretend like I know what Scott is talking about when he's talking about next year's draft class. I know a little bit. I haven't really started looking at tape yet for next year, though.
Well, I mean, some of them are... The big problem with projecting a draft class this early is you've got so many guys who have yet to play a full down.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, I digress. Something we'll get into next week.
All right.
And so, everybody, thank you for listening to the Falcons Central podcast. We will see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning in to Falcons Central. For Falcons news, blogs, stats, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.